Hey folks, welcome back to another video. Today I'll show you how you can get some repeating patterns out of the sample and hold LFO inside Bitwig Studio. And it's not explained in the manual, also not on the screen here. And it's a kind of an odd behavior of the sample and hold LFO when you have it in the hold mode here. And you need to input some phase values here with this input check to actually get something out of it. I have the grid itself here in mono mode. I always forget to mention this because people try to replicate what I do in the grid. And if you need a self-running patch, then you always need to put the grid into monophonic mode. Okay, so now we need here an oscilloscope. Switch this to slow mode. Make this a bit longer so you can see what's going on. So when you have this here, for instance, in Hertz mode, and you get some values out of it, and it depends how many or how fast you get values out of it by changing here the rate, basically. But what you get is an always random value, at least it seems that way. So you get always fresh new values. So when you use this, for instance, as a note input for pitches, then you get always new kind of combinations of notes or pitch signals or pitch informations. So a lot of people actually want to do some kind of generative music. So they need repeating patterns, right? So you need a melody, and this melody is maybe a bar long or 2 bars long. And then inside these 2 bars, you want always have the same notes playing in the same order to get a melody. This is how a melody works, right? You have a repeating pattern of notes. So what we do now is we put this back here into hold mode. So you can see there's only coming out here one value. And the user xiso, actually, that you probably already know from the Bitwig Discord, I also link you to his channel in the description below, found out by accident or by explaining something different that you actually can input into the phase jack here of the sample and hold LFO values above 1. So normally a phase signal looks like this. So when I use a phase in here, so this is how a phase signal looks like. It's a ramp from 0 to 1. And it defines all kinds of positioning for LFOs, where you are in the cycle, or, you know, yeah, it's basically a positioning signal. So it's always from 0 to 1. And you have to input this also here, or you can input this here. Pull this all the way up. And you can see something happens here already, but not really that much. And it turns out when you have the sample and hold LFO in hold mode, you actually only fade between 2 values, 2 random values. And everything above 1, which you don't get at the moment because the phase signal is only from 0 to 1, you can access all kinds of values that are basically static. So if we put a trigger on here, let's see, this one here, and trigger this, you can see something changes here. And when we also use here the phase signal as a second input, you can see every time at the same point on the phase signal, something happens. We have always at the end of the phase signal of the cycle here, yeah, a small curve downwards. And when we press retrigger, it looks differently now. So now we have this kind of shape here, but it's always the same shape, right? And it turns out that in this hold mode, when you input your phase signal from 0 to 1, you fade between 2 values, 2 random values that are only generated by retriggering the sample and hold LFO. So every time you press this, you get a different fade between 2 values. As you can see, now we have this kind of shape here. So if we now amplify this phase signal here by, let's say, using multiply and the constant, what we do now by using maybe 2 here, we make the phase signal twice as high. As you can see here, we go way beyond of the 1 value. So now the phase signal ranges from 0 to 2. And you can see the shape changes here, even though a phase signal is not greater than 1. If you input here a signal that's greater than 1, then you get more out of the sample and hold LFO, which is kind of unique, I think. I haven't tested this also not with other oscillators, but with the sample and hold LFO, it looks that way. So now you can amplify this even more. So let's say 8. You can see we have now a shape here that's kind of has more kind of value steps in there, with also some curves in it. I think it's just sampled noise. So every time you press this trigger button here, it samples a bunch of noise, a chunk of noise, and then it stretches it out. And you can use then the hold mode here and access basically the whole range. I think you can go up to 124 or something like this here. I'm not even sure, to access the whole sampled noise part here. But if you go down to 8, for instance, you just get an excerpt from this noise. But the important part is that you get now a signal that's random when you press the trigger button, but then it repeats. It's probabilistic, basically. You know what you're getting out of it. And then you can use the signal as a note source, basically. So we use a quantizer here to bring it to a scale, of course. Or maybe use here D sharp minor. Of course you like it, I know it. So we get into that. And then we obviously get here a lot of high pitched notes because this signal that goes from 0 to 1. So we need to use an attenuate here before that and scale everything down maybe to this. You can see it's the same curve, it's just scaled down. Then we use a transpose because we want to use A minor. Back from C down to A, it's -3. Use a sample and hold. Use a trigger here. Another trigger. So this part is not really important. It's just needed to make some music with it. The important part is basically this part here, which generates the notes. Clock quantize, there it is. Maybe 7, 16. Then we use a sine oscillator. We use here the notes. We trigger the sample and hold with this. And we use an AD. Trigger also this one here. And we need an output, of course, here. Let's see. So I get pretty much a lot of different things here. If you want to change basically this melody, want to have a different melody, then you can re-trigger and it randomly samples another bunch of noise. And you get a different curve and a different melody line. You can also access here or change the melody by using this feedback thing here. And I think the feedback knob also applies, exactly like it's explained here in the description. Correlation of successive output values where positive settings trend towards small changes over time and negative settings can lead to repeating patterns. Okay, so this should be more repetitive here than this one. Then you can also dial in here the epoch settings. Okay, so you can play around with this also. Another trick that also XISO found out is, or it's actually not a trick, but you can offset this range here. So now we basically have a phase signal, as you can see here, from 0 to 8, because we amplified it here by 8. So this ramp signal here is going from 0 to 8. But we can also offset, so we can say we don't want to have the sample or the noise sample from 0 to 8. We want to have it from 8 to 16 maybe, right? So you can use some math here. We need an add and another multiply and a constant. So 2 times 8, right? Which means we scale this up from 8 to 16 then, and then we add these two together. You can see now the phase signal is completely out of reach here. It doesn't start at 0. It starts at 8 and goes up to 16. So what this means is this is here kind of a pattern. So now you have the first pattern, which is repeating but random, and this is the first pattern, which is also randomly generated, but it's always the same. And the third pattern. So you have a lot of patterns you can access here from this noise, which is just stretched out. And it's always resampled when you hit this trigger button here. So if you press this, we sample a new chunk of noise, we get new values, and we can access these values here with these math operations. So the sample and hold module here in this hold mode is actually a nice source of pitch signals, which are repeating, and you can create new random combinations of values by pushing this trigger button here or by re-triggering the sample and hold LFO. And you can also use here this kind of math operation to actually access some patterns. You can define how long the pattern is, which is more like the sample size here, 5. And then you can iterate through different patterns, getting different melodies, but these melodies are always the same. If you think this whole pattern thing here is too much work and you can't remember how to patch it here, there's a quicker way, which is probably better for if you do this kind of patching live. So we remove this here, and you can see we have here a multiplication operation and just an add operation, which is just scaling and then offsetting here. And when we remove this, we can also do the scaling by using a volume knob. You can see here it's going from 0 to 1 like before. And when we amplify the signal, it's now going from 0 to, I don't know, 8, something above 1. And then to offset this, we can use the bias module and say, just offset the whole thing. Or let's go back to 0 to 1 here, so you can see it. So now it goes from 0 to 1, and then we offset. And it starts somewhere above 0 here, maybe at 0.5, and it goes up to 1.5, for instance. So you can access multiple patterns with the bias module. You can even modulate this better. So it's maybe a quicker approach. And of course, for the generation, you don't need this here. Only this. So this is an offset. It's an amplify. That's all you need to create random reoccurring patterns with the sample and hold LFO. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like if you liked the video, ask me some questions in the comments, and make sure you also follow XISO here on YouTube. And thanks also to XISO for giving me this hint about this trick, because it's actually pretty neat. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.